Before this episode begins, a gentle note. Today's conversation covers pregnancy loss, miscarriage, abortion, and grief. If any of those are close to you right now, please take care of yourself as you listen. And it's okay to pause, come back, or share this with someone else instead. There is no right way to hold this. There are some experiences in motherhood that don't end when we think they will. Pregnancy loss is often spoken about as something that happens, and then we move forward. But what's talked about far less is what happens when the grief doesn't stay in the past, or when it returns in another pregnancy, or showing up after your healthy baby is born. Today, we're opening up that conversation. I'm joined by Dr. Renée Out, a doctor, a bereavement counsellor, someone who works closely with women navigating the emotional impact of miscarriage, stillbirth, abortion, and medical pregnancy loss through her practice. And today, we're talking about something many mothers experience, but very few feel able to say out loud. Dr. Renée, welcome to Down Parenting.
Thank you, Eva.
Can you share us a little bit about yourself and why you do what you do?
Yeah, I'm Renée Out. I'm 38 now, and I'm a doctor now for about 13 years. At first, I specialized in obstetrics, and then I met my husband, and we decided that we wanted some kids. So now I have 3 kids, 8, 5, and 3. After 6 pregnancies, so we lost 3. And that also made that, our life is too busy now he's having a busy job to combine that with working in obstetrics. So now I have my own business in helping people after they lost their pregnancy.
So Renée, to begin with, when people actually think about pregnancy loss, they often think about the moment itself. But in your work, what do you see happens after that, especially in the longer term?
Well, it's true what you say. In the moment, they just think, okay, this happened and just move on. We want a baby, so we try again. And then maybe it happens again and maybe again. Then there comes a point where they think, how do I manage all this loss? And that's when we talk about miscarriage, early miscarriage. When we talk about stillbirth, most of the people around them knew that they were pregnant, so they knew they lost something if they don't show up with the baby. But abortion, nobody knows. And some people feel guilty about having had the abortion, so they feel very alone. And what I see is that it's not fixed to a certain moment. It's not only fixed at the time that it happens. It can become a thing when menopause is showing up, because then it's really a point in their lives where reproduction is over, so there won't be any new babies. Or same is when all their friends become grandparents, but they don't. So it's not fixed to a certain moment. Grief can ask your time anytime.
And how does that look like when you have a baby after loss, 1 loss, 2 loss, 3 losses?
Yeah, well, often they grieve and sometimes they ask for help, sometimes not. And then they become pregnant again. And the pregnancy is never, I always say naive. You're always, okay, what if? Can I handle it again? That fear, that constant voice in your mind of fear. And then everything goes well, I hope. And then you have the baby. And then it's what you lost was so sort of abstract. And now you have a baby and it's so real what you lost. So now you know what it looks like, the nose or maybe the sound of the first cry. And then you think, how would it have been with the baby that we lost? And then it becomes so real what you lost that sometimes the grief comes at that moment. And then you feel guilty because you want to be happy because you have a healthy baby and you feel the grief too. So then it's a sort of a struggle and then you have the hormones like sky high. It's very complicated.
And for someone who might say, I've moved on or that was in the past, how can that experience still live on in the body or the mind without them actually fully realizing it?
Well, I always say that you try to put the grief in a sort of a box. And then you go and sit on the box and you do your best that the box remains closed. But at a certain time, it explodes and then it takes over your life. And that's what can happen when you're tired. Hormones are sky high and you're facing what you lost so in your hands. You're seeing really what you lost last time. So what I see then is that people have fear, they feel guilty, they can't really enjoy the time of having a newborn. Well, you're tired anyway, but then it can affect your relationship and how you communicate. There will be a moment that you have to return to work, but the only thing you think about is why. It's not important to work, but I have to. So, but why? Why would I? Those real life questions can show up.
That sounds quite heavy. I was going to ask you what other kind of emotions really sit with us, like would there be anxiety or emotional guarding, difficult attaching or over attaching, some people might say, which I really hate that terminology.
Well, grief is so personal. Everybody reacts in their own ways. Some people go inside and stay in their own bubble, and others go outside so they don't have to think about it all the time. They are distracted because, well, they go to work and to parties and have time with their friends, so they don't have to think about what they lost. Everybody does it in their own way. So all the emotions that you feel are normal.
And we know the phrase, the body keeps the score. Do you think that there's people who share the same kind of feeling of loss within the body? Like, is there a place that it's usually found?
But I think that a lot of physical complaints where there is no real diagnosis for can be related to loss. Not per se everybody lost a baby, but if you lost a baby, it can be that you have pain in your wrist, for example. But why should you have pain in your wrist? But that's maybe your point where your stress and your grief comes out. It's not so easy to say. That's why it's so vague, so strange. But I do believe that some complaints in your body, like your shoulder or maybe a headache that doesn't resolve with paracetamol, can be a part of coming out of the grief.
That sounds pretty intense to add on to a new mom, especially if someone's just given birth or they're 6 weeks or 6 months or even a year into having a baby, that they're also coming out with something and they're not sure what it is. Do you have any suggestions of being able to start working through something, or is there a process that they're meant to follow?
Well, also the process is very personal and everybody has to do what feels right for them. So if it's not your time to work on your grief, go on. If that's your way, just do what feels good for you. And you don't have to be afraid of those complaints. And I'm just mentioning, but if you have those complaints and you went to the GP and they can't find a reason, maybe it's good to think, hey, maybe it's the grief that's telling me something, and maybe it's good to do something with it. You don't have to, but I think if you acknowledge for yourself that it could be grief, it releases maybe a little bit already.
Something I wouldn't have considered myself. But when we talk about anyone having a baby, one thing that is always said to anyone, no matter who they are, if they've had a miscarriage or a loss of any kind, it's always a case of, but you have a healthy baby. Mm-hmm. So there's also something really complex here, because there is the healthy baby and there can be this expectation to feel okay. Can you talk about the guilt that can come with still feeling grief?
Yeah, it would be like I said, I have 3 kids. If I lose one, I really hope it never happens to me. But if I lose one, would anybody say, at least you have 2? No, nobody would say. But why do we say those things when you lose a pregnancy? It downgrades the impact and the value of the pregnancy. So I think it's important for everybody who lost a baby that the grief is the other side of the medal of love. So the more you feel guilt, what is a sign of grief, the more you loved the one that you lost. So it doesn't make your grief less, but it gives you, well, you loved that baby. So feel free to give the love. You can't really give it to the baby because it's not here, but there are ways to show your love for your baby in other ways.
Can you give some examples?
Yeah, once I had a lady and she made a sort of altar after she was with me, and she puts it in the living room with a photo of the ultrasound and a small candle. That was her way of expressing her love. You can also plant a tree, for example, or make a birdhouse with other kids and then paint it on the outside, because you have to take care of the birdhouse. You have to clean it every year, and then you see new birds coming in the spring. And it gives you the feeling that you can do something for your kid.
Something I wouldn't have thought about.
It can be very difficult for people to talk with their other children about the loss they had. And sometimes they never tell them, but it is a part of your story and it's a part of their children's line, the family tree.
Do you look at family constellations in that way, that you think
Yeah.
where each child comes?
Yeah. So I think very Dutch in this, and I think, well, just move on, and what happened in the past stays in the past. But there was a moment that I told my eldest, he's 8 now, that I had a miscarriage before him. So it just was sort of a notice, and he went on. And then a few days later, he said, "Hey, Mom, but that means that I'm not the eldest." No, you're not the eldest. And it sort of a thing fell off, that he's not carrying that heavy load of being the eldest in the family. And it was a miscarriage at, well, about 6 weeks. So I don't know what the gender was, but he's telling now once in a while that he has a big sister. I'm very proud. So I can't explain it, but it helps him to know that he's not the first one.
Wow. That's usually, they always say the youngest children are still connected to the another world, and they're able to connect to a baby in a belly, or they know already the gender. Sometimes it's a magical thing. Sometimes you get to see on Instagram and you think, oh, I wonder what that's
Yeah.
like. But for an 8-year-old, I think that's quite astounding to hear something even so powerful that he's able to comprehend.
I don't know. I can't explain. So I don't know if you have to believe it, but for him, this is his version of his story. So for him, it's true.
And speaking about the family in total, I guess, for the partners listening who want to support, but they just don't know how, what actually helps in these moments, and maybe even what can unintentionally make it harder?
Well, I think it helps to know that we know from science that men grieve different than women do. Women want to stay connected with the baby they lost, and men, they think, okay, that happened and move on. They're more practical, while women are more emotional. So it's not that the men are not grieving, but they do it different. It helps, I think, to know that this is true. So what doesn't help is that you don't talk about it, because then you slowly go apart. But what you can say is, hey, I see that you're mourning, or that you're unhappy, you're crying. You're doing it your way. It's not my way. You're doing it your way. What can I do to help? How can I do something for you? And then as a woman, it's very hard to express what you need, because very often we don't know. So keep it simple. Just ask for a hug, or tell me you love me, or just stay with me on the couch tonight and watch a easy film, an easy movie, or whatever. Don't think in a holiday or an evening going out. Just keep it small, keep it simple for what you need at that moment.
And what can unintentionally make it harder that maybe partners aren't really aware of?
To not talk about it.
Is the goal actually to move on for either the grieving mother, or now the mother holding a healthy baby?
I would say acknowledge what you feel, because it matters what you feel. And then do what helps you. So if it helps for you to paint, paint. If it helps for you to walk like every once a month for your baby, go out and walk. If you like cake, make a cake. Make it your own ritual, and then eat it together or alone. And you don't have to make a huge conversation about it if that's not your way, but just mention, do you sometimes think about how we were walking about behind the stroller now? Just those simple questions, and then you can just answer with yes or no.
It's really an individual process, is what I'm hearing right now.
Yeah, it is. So there's no right or wrong. Just take care of yourself and feel what you need. Yeah.
So this has been a short one, merely because it's just a conversation starter, and it might resonate with you, even quietly. Please know that you're not alone. It's really one of those parts of motherhood that many actually carry, but very few feel any permission to speak about. So that's why this is a short conversation with Renée, because we just need a conversation starter right now. If this episode comes to mind for someone, share it with them. As Renée said, we need to communicate. We need to share our stories, and we need to make sure that we just don't forget about it. It's not something that happened in the past. It's something we live with every day. Because sometimes the most powerful thing we can offer is helping someone feel understood. Thank you, Renée.
Thank you.